Rethink Wearables. I think we're addressing here a very interesting topic. Everybody's talking about wearables today. Every major technology company is about to release some kind of wearable device. Startups as well are entering the market here. So I'm very excited to have several representatives of this industry here today. We have Greta Kreuzer. She's co-founder and CFO at Cosinuss. Cosinuss developed a technology that enables the continuous monitoring of vital parameters by using an intelligent smart headphone. Then we have Mauricio. He's the CEO of Wotch. This is a startup based in Cologne that brings technology into the classic wrist by producing a smart wristband, a so-called smart watch. Then we have Hendrik Witt. He's CEO of the wearable computing company Ubimax, which he co-founded in 2014. And now they are focusing exclusively on wearable computing services and solutions for companies and organizations. Then we have Wrenback. He's the CTO at Vectorform. And Vectorform invents digital products and experiences with a focus on innovative mobile and emerging technologies. And interesting, prior to that, Edward was among the leaders who developed the Siri iPhone application. So we gathered really expertise here on this panel, and I'm pretty excited to start. Let's jump in. So, Hendrik, I'd like to start with you. Wearables is everywhere, as I mentioned. This is already a hype about wearable devices here. According to IHS, this will be a $30 billion industry by 2018. But could you explain a little bit what is wearable technology, what wearable devices for you, and where do we stand right now? 2014.
For me?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I mean, what is wearable technology? For me, wearable technology is everything of every kind of technology that you can really wear on your body. It can be, of course, the kind of smartwatches or in-ears, but it can also be those kind of smart glasses I'm wearing, like the Google Glass, but there are a bunch of others. But wearable technology to me is also something in the area of smart textiles. Even that I want to consider as wearables. So when you have conductive yarns, you can imagine fashion that can, change its shape due to your mood or whatever, due to any kind of environmental constraints or context. And for me, the paradigm of wearable computing is it's always on, it's always there. It considers context, be it your own context or the context, of the environment you're in, and it's meant to be unobtrusive. Meaning, whenever every kind of innovation and any kind of application you're building, it shouldn't actually hinder you. I mean, we're more active in the industrial space, so looking into applications for enterprises. So for us, it's very important that we build those applications that do not hinder the actual users, but actually support them, giving them value add by bringing additional information into their reach, right?
So you are focusing mainly on head-mounted displays at Ubimax. Could you briefly explain what you're doing there?
Yeah, as you introduced, Ubimax is actually a company focusing on industrial application for wearables. In most of the cases today, enterprises are interested in those kind of smart glasses from the different manufacturers, and that is basically because it allows you to design applications that deliver real hands-freeness. So and that's why we build application for various processes, like for warehouse picking, or in the automotive sector, we're doing a lot of in terms of production and quality assurance, but also maintenance applications are among those application areas which we serve. And that is, in most of the cases, again, because the hands-freeness is one of the key elements that is required by the workers, right? If you, for example, think of maintaining a larger machine, you usually require those hands of your workers to fix certain things. And for example, in aircraft maintenance, this is huge machines actually, and their hands-freeness is wanted. And also the point that the engines get more complex and more complex, And the technicians usually are not necessarily aware of all the tiny information, bits and pieces that they need for fixing a certain thing. And so wearables can really give you value add.
Yep. Mauricio, you were working a different market there. You're turning normal things into smart things, mostly focusing on watches. How does that actually work?
I would like to tell a short story how we came to the idea. And some years ago I got this classic wristwatch as a present from my family, and since this day I'm in love with classic wristwatches. And on the other side I'm a big friend of technology, especially of the smartwatches. They help us to live better, they bring us information when we want to have them and keep information away from us when we don't want to have them. So we ask ourselves if that's the solution. We're two devices, we're in a classic wristwatch, we're in a smartwatch, and of course for us that's not the solution. And so we came up with the concept of bringing the technology into the wristband. And this is our actual product design, our prototype. We are finalizing our prototype, which is bigger than this. And for us, it's very important to bring the smartness of wearables into everyday objects. For us, a wristwatch is something that is being sold like 1.2 billion per year. So it's very common that you actually wear watches. It's something that is normal. It's not like a glass where you when we wear it, you look like an industry expert or somebody who's not from the dirt, something like this. So we see these kind of things we see more in the industry, and for the everyday for the consumers we see the smartness into everyday objects. If it's the shoe, if it's the wristwatch, if it's your clothes, even if it's the contact lenses. So for me, wearables have to be invisible for others and also invisible for you. So that it's with you, it measures your vital information, but it's not something like that you look like you want to measure everything about you.
So these days when you're buying a watch, it's not about knowing what time is it. It's a lot about having an accessory and putting a nice thing around your wrist. So what role does design play when you have a normal watch there and then having a smartwatch? What the different kind of products here? What does design play a role when you work in your watches?
I think for the wearable future, it's very important that wearables look good, look like everyday objects, and design is for me one of the crucial things. Only if we manage it to get these objects socially accepted, then there will be a bright future for all of the wearables. So for me, design is one of the most important things when you design wearables.
I'd like to ask this question to Greta as well, because you're producing headphones, and headphones you usually know just to listen to music or stuff like this. What did you have to consider when creating your headphone at Cosinuss?
Well, actually, these are not headphones because we kind of come from the other side. We come from measuring vital signs, so I'd say it's a sensor, and the next step will be to put receivers or put audio function in it. But we come from the side to measure exactly, to have accurate measurements of vital signs, and that's the most important point for us today. To show and to provide sensors that can measure accurate, mobile and continuously, so that the user is not disturbed in any way, that it doesn't look like, I'd say, a hearing aid or something like that, so it's that you're not disturbed in your everyday life. And that's what's important for us today. And what you said about our design, of course design is important, but I would say that wearables are still at the very beginning of the innovation life cycle, and I think the most important thing now is to show the people that it's functioning, to get reasonable values from your body, from the devices, and then later on I think later on design and yeah, lifestyle and everything, services around it will be much more important than today.
Edward, do you agree? Is it important first concentrate on functionality and put the design factor in second place, or how do you see it?
I think our perspective is usually more consumer-oriented, and for us, design is the utmost importance. I think we have a term we use, we call it natural user environment, which really means the wearable or any technology, not just a wearable, has to provide information in a way that's pretty transparent and seamless to the user. So if your information delivery mechanism has what I call friction in it, things that kind of block you, you have to look at your watch, or you have to do things, rather than have that information delivered to you at the time you need it, kind of automatically. To me, that's the ultimate in design and functionality.
So you, at Vectorform, you have a lot of experience in how to invent new things. You, in person, have a lot of experience in how to command devices, especially in voice command. So what's the important factor when you want to create a device that's relying on voice demand here?
When it comes to voice, one of the key problems we run into as an industry is really energy. Having a voice recognition system on a wearable just requires a lot of energy. And what you're seeing with, most recently with Samsung, they have a dedicated chip that listens for that kind of start command. But ultimately, there's not enough power in the wearable to do the voice recognition, so it has to communicate to the external server. And when you do that, the battery power required to power that is the fundamental problem.
Will it be possible to control every device by voice one day in your washing machine and stuff like this?
Absolutely, I think that's coming. I think what we're running into today, again, is for the last 30 years even, people have always been saying, voice recognition is just a couple years away. So I would hate to even make any sort of statement like that today, saying 2 years from now, because people have literally been saying that for the last 30 years. But it is a huge challenge to get over. And I feel we're close, but people have felt that way before.
So when we look a little bit not only on how to use it, but what features do these wearable devices have? I'm thinking of the augmented reality factor here. Hendrik, you're already wearing the Google Glass here. Could you explain a little bit how are these devices changing the reality into some kind of augmented reality? What's happening there?
Well, augmented reality, if you combine that with wearables, it means actually having a see-through device, usually a binocular one. So not the kind of monocular one that I'm wearing here, like the glasses, the monocular, but having it really like prescription glasses, right? And what happens is, by using cameras, maybe also depth sensing technology, you can actually kind of superimpose computer-generated information right in the field of view of the user. So, for example, one application could be, of course, navigation. Like you know that from car navigation systems, like having some fancy errors. But you can also think of, instead of navigating people, it can also be, using the sensor technology, like the cameras and the depth sensing technology, for example, like we do, and we have a demonstrator in the show floor there, using it for detecting whether the worker has actually picked the right item from the shelf. So we're doing that using augmented reality on the one hand side to guide the worker to the right place, but then actually going the next step and taking the sensors, the inputs, to measure and make sure that they really take the right item and give them feedback if they attempt to take the wrong one. So, and this is the kind of thing that when I'm talking augmented reality, what is my understanding of it.
In fact, many people already know some effects of augmented reality. We've seen it in movies like Minority Report. Are we already there? Is this becoming reality, what we've seen in movies before?
Well, we're definitely there that it is doable to do some kind of augmented reality. The colleagues from Vectorform are showing that with a nice car from BMW. So, but I think, even though we have a kind of showcase and a demonstrator out in the shop, in the show floor, for me it will take, I think, at least 5 years from now to make that become really reality, augmented reality in combination with wearables, because it's actually the hardware currently that we are lacking. I mean, we have hardware, but this is by far too bulky looking, right? And as we heard, design matters. So it really will take time to have the functionality ready that we need, have the form factor ready, and then last but not least, have the price ready for it, right? Because whenever you shrink down things, you can do it, but it always comes with the downside of usually an increased price. So, and there's no way. I mean, we have devices that are worth 35,000 euros. So that's by far exceeding any kind of budget, right? At least even in the industry. For consumer, I wouldn't care, right?
Edward, you brought a use case here using augmented reality with the BMW i8. Is this the main market right now, augmented reality for business? Are consumers maybe too shy of using, or are there use cases for users which seem interesting? Google recently postponed the launch for Google Glass. How do you see the market right now?
Yeah, that's a very good question. When you look at the BMW experience, and if you haven't gone through it, you should. I think it's a kind of a great example of where we're at today, which is it's fun, it's interesting, not a lot of value behind it though, really, ultimately. So I think it's interesting and it's fun to play with, but it's really not something I can take into my job tomorrow. And that's what we ultimately need to get to in order for these things to become mass adopted and consumer ready. So yeah, when you look at what's going on in mobile phones today, we're doing some things in vehicle. I call augmented reality even say, if I can put my phone at a warning indicator in my car and have it tell me what that means rather than always wondering, this light came on, what does it mean? That's in essence an augmented reality experience, and that is ready to be at the consumer level today. But yeah, taking the experience we have with BMW and making it something that's pervasive is probably right several years away still.
So this comes also for other wearable devices. How do you get developers to really make apps for devices that are not only there in the consumer market, that you have to find their markets still? How do you address this problem that you need to build apps in order to get consumers for a new device?
Well, I think it always comes down to that fundamental issue, the chicken and egg problem, right? Which is somebody has to have that vision, the willingness to invest in that. And in the States, we have this great venture capital kind of environment nowadays, where people are willing to make those leaps of faith to make those projects happen. Individual developers really don't have the ability to do that. It has to almost come from some sort of angel that can support the team as they spin that technology out.
Okay. When we go over this a little bit, asking this about other wearable devices, Greta, how did you do that at Cosinuss? Was there a consumer market for you already there that you would like to address, or how did you come up with your invention?
Well, these are two questions, I think. How we did come up with the invention was a PhD thesis with the topic to develop sensors, wearable sensors. It was not defined where to wear the wearable sensor and what vital signs we should measure. It was just it should be wearable and it shouldn't disturb the people when wearing it. So, and then we found the ear as a very good measuring place because you don't move your head a lot, and when you move your head, you move it slower. And all wearable devices that measure some kind of vital signs have the problem with moving body parts. If you measure here at the wrist, you have huge disturbance due to blood splashing in your veins. And we have the same in the ear, of course, but not in that dimensions like here. So we found the ear as a very good place because it's also a little bit protected because we are in the outer ear canal. We're not outside the ear, but inside really the ear canal. And we looked what vital signs we can measure in there and found heart rate variability, core body temperature. That's a really great USP of Cosinuss because there's no other device that can measure core body temperature with a mobile sensor in a continuous way. And there's great interest from research, from from army and things like that, where they want to monitor people. And but blood oxygen saturation, you also can measure in the ear. So that was how we found the development. And customers we see in sports, lifestyle field, I'd say, in healthcare. But you don't have to think, when I say healthcare, don't think on clinics. Also clinics, yes, but that's I'd say a market for the near future, because right now everything's getting mobile and wireless, but it's a little bit slow. But when I say healthcare, I think of mobile health, like remote patient monitoring at home, home health, also rescue, emergency rescue, and things like that, where mobile sensors are needed to monitor the people. And what we also see is worker safety, fire workers, army, policemen, but also workers in rooms where they have clothes on all over. So how do you call it? Is overalls. Everywhere where you wear such clothes, you have problems with your temperature, core body temperature. If core body temperature gets higher and is a lot of time at a high level, then your concentration is sinking and you make mistakes and things like that. So in production lines and consumer market, we see in sports for the beginning, and also coming very soon is this home health topic, that everybody want to monitor himself to see, am I sick, is my blood pressure, or my physician said that my blood pressure is high, so I have to monitor myself. Not blood pressure with our sensor, but heart rate, core body temperature, to see in the curves, not in one value, but over days, if there's something moving, if there's something coming up.
Okay, so when we see the smart glasses, then we heard there currently is more the demand from the business side. When we look at other devices, for example, smart watches, Mauricio, do you see that consumers are driving this market, that they're really demanding smart watches? Is it a different case?
I think with wearables we've got completely new possibilities that haven't been possible. If we talk about healthcare, about measuring vital information, it's I think the complete healthcare system is changing, because if we talk about healthcare today, for me it's something like it's more of sick care. If you get sick, if you go to the doctor, you go to the hospital, maybe you got fixed and you go back home, and then you don't know nothing about your healthcare. So healthcare is for me getting more about prevention, more about information, and the more information we collect from our body, the better we can decide whether we are sick, the better the doctor can tell us what to do if there's something. And one important thing is that maybe you get to know earlier what's happening, and then you can act faster. So I think there's not the demand from consumers right now, but all the people out there, entrepreneurs, all the healthcare companies, they see the new possibilities that are now, for the first time in history, we are able to collect that much information for a long time period, not only for 1 day or 2 weeks, but if you measure like your sleep patterns for 1 year, or your movement for 1 year, your heart rate, if your heart rate changes during if it changed during the last two weeks, and you've got information from one year ago. I think these are very good information, and so the possibilities are making this kind of solution. The demand from the consumers will follow, I think.
So we have already like hug simulation jackets for little kids that will simulate the parental hug if they are feeling alone. We have sport clothes measuring every activity. For example, when you're working out, which muscle is being worked right now. We have intelligent diapers for babies. Who's going to wear every device? Are we wearing like 10 devices with us every day. How do you see that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think that there will be this one device that we wear. I think the combination of everything is making the best information. I think there are use cases that nobody wants to use, like putting babies, 10, 12 sensors, something like this. It's not natural. It's not human being. But I think there are many things, especially things that you don't see. If you've got something in your shoe, it measures your steps, how you walk, how your movement is. If you got some earphones that measures your pulse, or if you measure your sleep with a smart bed or something. I think everything that you can't see is socially acceptable and is being used. So I see the future in having several devices. So one for sports, one for sleeping, and the main thing, or the best thing about it, I think, is when you get all information and have the combination of all of everything. If you got a website, you've got Google Analytics. You see where the people from, how many users are there, how fast is it, and I think that's the direction where wearables are going, having more and more information.
If we look a little bit on the future, there are some scenarios that we could imagine. For example, when we, instead of wearables, one day put embeddables underneath our skin. I mean, that's a whole different way of defining wearables here. When will we get there? Is this imaginable that someday we have all tattoos, intelligent tattoos, or micro sensors underneath our skin that will do the job that nowadays are doing some headphones or other sensors? Greta, what do you think?
Well, I think that this is really the future, but it's not the near future. I also think that the winner of the race will be a device that can do a lot, not just one thing, not just sleep and not just heart rate, but a device that can measure as many vital signs and parameters as needed. And also, I think the trend will go to implanted sensors, but there are big issues like energy, like you said, energy supply. And well, if technology is so far that you can fuel your sensors with bio energy, so like with I don't know, glucose fueled energy or something like that, then the trend will go to implanted sensors. I'm sure of that. Yeah.
Steve Morgan once said that humans are entering a stage of a self-designed evolution. And what do you think? Is it possible that one day humans want to change or replace their natural eye with an enhanced version of their eye, having, for example, infrared vision or something like this?
I think that probably is in the future. What's interesting to me is, personally, I've never had LASIK surgery even, because I'm kind of worried about somebody going in and touching my eye, and even though the success rate is 99.9%, I don't want to be that 0.01% failure. So there is going to be that natural human kind of resistance to, if you can give me 100% guarantee that that's going to work, I'm all for it. If you can't give me 100%, I'm less interested. But if you look at what my mom has today, she has an implanted defibrillator device, right? You could think of that as a wearable, and you could think it has battery enough to last for 4 years. So we are kind of there in a sense. We are augmenting humans today, probably not to the extent that we're imagining when we have this discussion. But yeah, that kind of augmentation does exist today.
So with every 10 years, systems and all devices are getting tinier and tinier. So how far is that away?
There's always, going back to the Bill Gates' very first book, there's always a quote there that I remember, and he said in the book that people kind of overestimate how far we can get in 2 years, but they really underestimate how far we can get in 10 years. So I think it's hard for us to even imagine where we're going to be 10 years from now. And if you go back, to 2004, the iPhone hadn't been invented yet, right? And so, you think about how much change has happened in the last 10 years, it's really hard for us to say 10 years from now that, I mean, it's obviously possible that everybody could be wearing some sort of augmented device.
So Hendrik, you're already more than 10 years in wearable computing. What do you say? Would you replace your arm or your finger with an intelligent version that enhances your capabilities?
Well, I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. The thing is, I think Edward was completely right, saying that, you know, even though it's technically feasible, the question is if it's, you know, acceptable by the humans, right? So there, I don't know. The only thing I know is when I started with wearables 14 years ago, you know, there were devices, huge devices, bulky devices. Nobody was imagining that the technology is where it is today, right? Even I think around 2000, 2005, 2006, everything was still considered, you know, cyborg, right? So, and personally, when I saw, you know, the word of wearables getting more and more attention, right? By, you know, Gartner bringing out wearables, and Google was launching Glass, at least in terms of the marketing campaign, I thought, well, last year, if I would be asked to, you know, to bet on wearables, how much would I have to spend, right? And probably it was only a few bucks. And that is because, you know, whenever you're there at a certain point, you know that from the technical point of view, you can do it. But you don't know what happens in terms of user acceptance. And then there was this bold move, I think, from Google saying, well, obviously there is this huge potential, especially for companies like Google that rely on people, you know, collecting data. So, I mean, they're collecting now for years from the web, and now they try to move to even more personal data. And I'm sure they knew that this is going to be a huge potential in terms of wearables. And then the question was, how can they actually initialize that process? And by bringing out those smart glasses, it changed from one year to another, right? And now everybody's talking wearables, and now there's a whole industry popping up. You know, for us, I mean, we're kind of measuring the different companies that are out there and you know, announcing new smart glasses, and it's basically quarter by quarter, 2 to 3 new companies pop up, bringing out the even better device, and nobody knows really where we will be in 5 years.
Is it because they need to have such a device, or because they really want to conquer the market or be a front runner in this area?
Yeah, I think it is really that there's a huge market in front of us. And it is, again, it was the chicken and egg problem, right? There was nobody. I mean, I started in 2004. I started, actually, I think it's still the largest EU-funded project on wearable computing that was called Where IT at Work. So it was about wearables in the work environment. And by the end of the project, I think the project lasted 5.5 years. So by the end of that project, we were at the phase saying, okay, look, here's the potential for the industry. It's huge. Here's where the technology is. We only need one company that invests a little bit of money, maybe it's a little bit more, but to bring the devices to a maturity level that it gets adopted by the market. And there was no company. I mean, there were companies like Micro-Optical, I remember, that had devices even 10 years ago that looked quite similar to this in terms of form factor and size, but they went backward. So because there wasn't a market. And now it changed it because Google took the money and invested it, and now the market is open, right, for all of us. And one thing is definitely collecting data, but the other thing is, you know, giving visual information also to the people.
So there are these huge, big companies from the US entering the market, like Google with the glasses. Well, now Apple is coming with its Apple Watch. You guys, mainly from Germany, from startups here, how could you benefit from this development?
I think from the Apple Watch, there will be many developers who can profit from the product by writing new apps, by using a function from the Apple Watch. But I think there will be no hardware startups, no hardware companies that can work with the Apple Watch. About Google, it's completely another thing. Google launched recently the Android Wear. It's an operation system for wearables, especially for smartwatches. And it's an open source operation system, and they're giving it out to other companies, startups, big companies. Samsung had first launched an Android Wear device. Now they've got their own system. And you see every week you see 2 or 3 new devices coming out based on Android Wear. So I think the same thing that Google made with the Google Glass, bringing it to the market, bringing it to the development, is now being now it's the same with the Android Wear operation system. They made it, they saw this huge potential. Of course, Google also wants to have more of our data. They want to have our online data, now also our offline data, and of course, these devices are very good for them. So I think it's very good for acceptance and for the future of wearables.
Do you see this for your own company as a chance to get in the wake of this excitement on the Apple Watch that you might benefit from this particularly?
Yes, of course. Some people say, guys, you're crazy, try to make some kind of wearables, but what we want to do is not a smartwatch like everybody's doing. We want to bring technology into the classic wristwatch. And putting here another watch band with technology inside, 2 years ago nobody would have think about. Only with this, with all smartwatches coming out, only with the possibilities from Android Wear operation system, only with these use cases, our target group are or will intensively think about if they want to keep their watch, if they want to have a smartwatch, or a combination of both. So for us, it's a very good thing because otherwise it wouldn't be possible for such solutions. It's like glasses before Google Glass came out. The technology was there. There has been some projects, but they didn't have a chance. It was too small.
Edward, what do you think? We have 3 young companies here from Germany. You have a lot of experience in the corporations. Do they have a chance to compete with these major technology companies?
Well, I think ultimately Google and Apple will own the information delivery mechanism, right? So when you think about the Apple Watch, yes, it has a heartbeat sensor in it, but ultimately the Apple Watch is about information delivery. And I think both what Mauricio and Greta's companies are focused on really is the other component of that, which is gathering that data, bringing that information, from your personal use. So I think there is a market for that yet. That's not a market that Apple or Google are really approaching, or Samsung for that matter, since Samsung is now branched away from Google when it comes to the watches. But yeah, they're really focused on the information delivery aspects of it. So I think there is a lot of market room in the information gathering side of it.
I think also if it's Apple, if it's Google or Samsung, all are making their own system to collect health data. If it's the health kit, not recently from Apple, if it's the Google Fit, that's the same like health kit only for Android devices. And also Samsung is making the SAMI system, same system. They want to collect vital information, collect everything, and make information available for other apps also. So I think there's so much, there are so many big players prepare their solutions that I think that the future was, that the wearables future will be a very big future.
Okay, so we have a few minutes left here. I would like to open this discussion to the audience here. If you already have a question, please raise your arm. If you would like to think of it a minute more, I would begin with another question here. It's open to every one of you. If you had to invest a pile of money into a certain thing, if you had to bet on the next big thing in wearables, what would that be?
What? Of course, wearables, I'd say. No, everything is really at the beginning, so it's wearables, like the sensors in the ear were all pronounced this
In my opinion, at least, what I see is we're kind of, at least when it comes to wearable technologies, is we're kind of laying the train tracks as the train is right behind us, right? And I think health is kind of the obvious first direction that people will turn to because it seems like collecting biometric data is something that's straightforward with the wearable device. But I think if I were looking to invest, it would be, how do I get off the train tracks and turn it into a starship? I think there has to be some sort of fundamental new killer functionality that moves it maybe away from health a little bit into something that's an unanticipated field. I think right now the investment is really just keeping the tracks ahead of the train.
I think maybe I would actually invest more in the application space because I think there's lots and lots of opportunities out there today, and there will be lots and lots of more in terms of hardware, in terms of measurements. But the question is for me, or the challenge is, how do we actually make use of those information to bring value add to the user, whatever that is, whether it's in the consumer space or the prosumer or the industrial professional space. By the end of the day, it's not the watch that you will wear, it's the watch plus the software that does a certain thing for you and that can deliver the kind of killer app. So I think it's not only the device that, the device definitely is a kind of tool that allows you to build your killer application. But by the end of the day, it is the application itself, I think. And in the case of wearables, that is, I think, very, very closely connected to each other. So the hardware and the software. So when we're looking into our day-to-day job, is not the kind of high-level software development, but it's always playing around and dealing with the embedded systems with a lot of constraints, with battery drain. So the thing is, we can build applications, lots and lots of applications, but they only last, let's say, half an hour until the devices overheat, and you need to swap the devices to another one. So, and this is definitely a problem in the professional space, but also in the consumer space. If devices are getting hot, you will probably fail with your application. So, in this connection between embedded devices, software, this is really where I want to